But we could just talk about reading in your genre. What's your genre? Read it, know it inside and out. Then we could each talk about stuff that we're reading that gives us that framework for knowing the culture of what you're doing.
I like that.
And then differentiation as well. For example, there are a lot of how-to coaching books that people have written. You know, this is what coaching is and how to do it. And the world has enough of them. Gary Collins has one, Tony Stoltzfus has one, so on, so on. Keith Webb, you know, there's a bunch of them. And so the differentiation is, you know, knowing my topic really well, but then writing more of a Seth Godin type, really short little blog essay type pieces that are less about how to coach and more addressed to people who've had some training and just want little pithy refreshers, you know. So that comes from knowing your genre, but then
like knowing the current state of it as well.
Looking for a way to, and then looking for a way to differentiate so that you have a unique product.
Yeah.
So let's just keep rapping about resources, man.
Yeah, I like it.
Justin, what are some of your favorite resources?
Well, I've been doing a lot of reading lately in the kind of the smaller subgenre of not maybe a year or two ago, if you had asked me, I'd primarily been reading kind of how to write better. And there's some great books I can recommend for that I've really loved. Donald Maass, M-A-A-S, writes How to Write the Breakout Novel, or Writing the Breakout Novel, I believe it is. Stephen King's on writing, Robert McKee's Story. There's the classics, you know, can't recommend them enough. And some others that we could probably throw out. I'm thinking maybe in the subject line of this video, maybe I'll post a written list of some of our suggestions and other resources as well. But right now, what I'm getting into more and enjoying is kind of books about and web courses about how to publish and market and successfully self-publish your material. Because the track that I've kind of increasingly been getting on is like, well, if I'm going to invest all this energy into writing good books, there's a lot of other people out there who also write good stuff and are really, really struggling these days to sort of get noticed and sell your stuff. So I've been really getting more into that kind of subgenre of, I guess, nonfiction, kind of how to be a successful independent self-publisher these days, which partly I just find really fascinating from a sociological perspective, like where we're at these days in publishing, which that line kind of moves daily, it seems, and weekly. So kind of trying to keep up with that. One resource that I just finished that I highly recommend, there's an author named Nick Stevenson. He writes a really successful kind of thriller, detective-y type series that I can't remember off the top of my head because I haven't read his fiction stuff, but he's just finished a course called Your First 10,000 Readers. The first set of video training pieces on that are free and they're excellent. He has just really mastered the art of kind of positioning your material on Amazon well. So I've been learning a lot from him that's been really good. Some other stuff as well that maybe we'll throw up in the comments section of this video. So that's where my head's been at lately in terms of kind of resources and outside reading. How about you, Adam? What have been some of your preferred sort of resources or inspiration or learning points, or also maybe just other, you know, and talk a little bit more about reading in your genre or whatever's on your mind about that broad topic?
Well, you know, one thing I've done recently in this blog, Seth's really famous, so everybody's heard of him, but you know, I'm just watching how he keeps it really, really brief and trying to model some of the essays that I'm and blog posts that I'm doing lately after that, because I know those pieces are going to be part of my nonfiction book that I'm working on. And so the nice thing is I'm able to release pieces of it to the public. Going to be setting up my website probably by the time these videos are live. Should be live. My blog site, adamgfleming.com. And so you'll be able to see kind of what I'm doing there. But I don't like to read nonfiction. Really, what I like to read is fiction. And I think since we're focusing on fiction writers for the most part, we need to talk about that. You need to read fiction both in your genre, and you need to read fiction that pushes you outside the genre that you like as well. And so for me, right now, I'm reading Flight Behavior by Barbara Kingsolver. She's quite an amazing writer. Flight Behavior, I think, is her newest novel. It just came out. It might be 2 years old now, so she might have another one. Flight Behavior. I like to go back and reread Huckleberry Finn every couple of years. Huckleberry Finn is one of those books that I find just immensely intricate and readable and fun, but deep at the same time. And I think that is a challenging book to write, is one that can grab people's attention when they're 12 years old. But as you get older, you can uncover more and more layers to sort of the ironies at play and stuff. And I also am fascinated by Huck Finn just by the fact that it took Mark Twain 10 years to write it. While he was writing a bunch of other stuff that never got considered as important. So, he's putting stuff out consistently because he's got to make a living, and he was a writer. But, he's also, through that whole time, working on his masterpiece. And I think that's instructive. So I like to read both classics but I pretty much stick to literary fiction for the most part. And I guess if there's something outside the literary fiction genre that I've read recently, it would have been the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo series.
Mm-hmm.
So I read a little bit of thriller mystery stuff. Debatable whether or not it's the best stuff in the genre, but very popular. So it certainly doesn't hurt to have an awareness of what's popular out there, in case that you might have some ideas and that you want to write and realize that, somebody else wrote a book with the same character's name, or maybe I shouldn't use that character's name because it's just really. On the other hand, I have a friend who's working on a mystery right now, and his main character's name is Tom Brady. And he did it on purpose because he wants the main character have to always say, "No, I'm not the football player."
But as long as it's an intentional choice versus accidental,
kind of do what you want.
Yeah.
Right, because at some point you're going to build all kinds of things around, maybe the name has significance and stuff, and then you're going to get to the editing process, and the editor's going to go, did you know that, so-and-so just came out with a book that, I don't know, like the Twilight series, what's her name? I haven't read that stuff, but you know what I mean? Or the 50 Shades of Grey or something. Did you know that your character's name is oh, crap, now I got to rewrite a whole bunch of stuff, and it's not just search and replace. It's like, did you actually build things around that character's name? Yeah. So right. It just helps to know what's going on in the pop world too. I read a chapter or two of 50 Shades of Grey in the bookstore, and then I was like, so I'm sorry, you don't have to read everything. It says in On Writing that when you get to the point of being able to write better than a certain book that you're reading, get rid of it. When you're 15 years old, read everything you can. Everything you're interested in, comic books, it doesn't matter. But when you start, I love how Justin, I love how you talk about being a professional writer, and we're not necessarily talking to be a full-time writer. But being a professional writer just means knowing your craft inside and out. And I think that just reading a wide variety of stuff is really important.
Yep. One of the things I want to mention real quick too, when it comes to reading, go with your gut to a degree. I think, like Adam was saying, the most important thing is be reading, and be reading intentionally. But one of the things that I had to kind of work through when I was at school, there's this very defined sense, if you spend any time in sort of writerly communities, about like what counts as good books, good reading, good things that you're supposed to read and discuss. And I finally had to come to terms with the fact that, like, frankly, that's just not my bag. I don't love those books. I'm not going to read them for fun. And they're so far outside of my genre that they're not necessarily instructive to me in that sense. So I'm working my way into a bit of a personal rule where every so often I've decided I'm going to choose a book that is one of those books, and I'm going to give it my very best attempt. And if it feels like I'm absolutely pulling teeth, I'm not going to force myself to finish it, but I am going to push myself to read things outside of my space, like Adam was saying, and let that challenge me and stretch me. And more often than not, I find good things in that I feel like I can take home with me. But I mostly let myself read fantasy fiction because that's what I'm writing. It's what I enjoy. And right now that's really instructive for me. And then the flip side of that is I've kind of started getting into this habit where I will, when I find myself in a bookstore in the Barnes and Nobles or something, I'll go to their kind of new and noteworthy shelf in that section, and I will browse and totally go on instinct, just cover design, and then from there you read the back of the book. And when I find something that grabs me, every couple of months I'll buy it and I'll read it, because I'm finding it really helpful to get a better sense of right now, what is coming out that is grabbing people's attention, that's getting shelf space, what is it that's working and why, how are the authors doing what they're doing. And it ends up meaning that I sometimes find myself reading a book that I would not normally have picked, that might even be a little sort of pulpy or a little cheesy in some ways, but it's what grabbed my attention. So I've given myself more permission to go ahead and just get it and read it and dissect it and find out what is it about this that's working commercially, what is it about it that's working artistically, and free myself up to do that a little bit without apologizing so much for the fact that it has, alien space monsters on the cover, or a guy with like a 10-foot sword, or whatever it happens to be, because that's my genre, and I want to know what it is that people are drawn to, and kind of why is this on the new and noteworthy shelf. So
Yep. And on the flip side of that, a couple quick stories about books that I read that I didn't like. I went to a used bookstore, independent bookstore, and picked up a copy of Dostoevsky. Yeah, Crime and Punishment was what it was. So first time I ever read a Dostoevsky, and it was just a few years ago because I hadn't ever studied Russian literature. So I took it up to the counter, and the lady looks at me and she goes, "Are you reading this for a class?" Like, life is a class, Like, of course I'm reading it for a class, but I said, "No, I'm not reading it for a class." And she said, "Well, what are you reading it for?" And I said, "Erudition." And she just looked at me like bug-eyed, like, well, "What are you talking about?" I don't think that it was because she didn't know the definition of the word erudition. I don't really care for Dostoevsky. I read some Dostoevsky and some Tolstoy, and I don't know if I'll do a whole lot more of that, because my theory on Russian writers is that they have 10 months of winter to write the book in, and their readers have 10 months of winter to read it in. And so they end up writing these volumes that are a head thick, and they're just so long and so tedious sometimes. And the other quick story is a much more modern writer, David Foster Wallace, who I believe committed suicide in his 30s, just 10 or 20 years ago, was writing in the 90s. And I read an article in Time magazine about how great David Foster Wallace was, what an awesome author and stuff. And so, I went to my used bookstore again, picked up a copy of The Broom of the System, I think it's called. I just got to the end of it, and I was like, meh. I read it. I read the whole thing. I plugged through it. It had a few moments. Not a real big David Foster Wallace fan. And I think part of that, you might want to edit this out. You might want to leave it, Justin. I think part of that is that somebody wrote, I can't remember where I saw it, I think it was an editor who had a blog article or something that said something like, I used to edit the slush or go through the slush pile at this magazine for short stories, and I could tell within 30 seconds whether or not the author loved people by what I was reading. Just within a few paragraphs, you could tell, did the author love people or not? And I guess my feeling about David Foster Wallace was I did not get the impression that David Foster Wallace loved people. Mm. You got to love people. If you don't love people, I don't know. I sort of suspect that the same could be said for Catcher in the Rye, which has been found in the apartments of several assassins, including the person who shot John Lennon and the person who shot Ronald Reagan. Both had dog-eared copies of that one in their apartment. If you hate people, don't write books that somebody's going to turn into an assassin from reading over and over. Just don't write.
There's your
just don't write at all.
For the day, everyone.
Just stop.
Don't create assassins. We should get bumper
stickers.
Don't
create assassins except in your fiction.
Don't turn people into assassins with your books. That'd be a good bumper sticker series. Sort of like my kid's an honor student. My books turn people into assassins.
My books turn people into assassins. My book caused John Lennon to be shot. I don't know. It's tragic, but you have to. If you don't love people, you can't write characters that are just lovable, even the ones that do bad stuff.
And
that might be a separate video all into itself there, Justin. What do you think?
Yeah, it's possible.
Just that last couple minutes, maybe just
might clip.
You have to love people. Title the video that. Clip that out and make
it a little smaller, bite-sized chunk. Yep, that sounds good.
Or my rant on Dostoevsky and David Foster Wallace together. I don't know. Whatever you want to do with it.
Yep.
Okay, so back to resources. Justin, what are we missing in terms of resources that people really need to know?
Well, I would say in terms of the resources piece, and this, I'm just going to go on like a minor personal rant because this is something that's really important to me. I feel very strongly that if you are embarking on sort of a professional writing posture, we live in an era of such privilege. I mean, people harken back to sort of the great writers and talk about everything that they did and their writing and whatnot. One of the things that I think about that, just as a small caveat, is most of the great writers, many of them in periods like Hemingway and Twain and so on, were incredibly social. They were social with other writers to a degree that I don't think authors today are to the same extent or in the same way. And maybe that's some of the things that we're trying to get at with this group. But they had to work really hard to master their craft. And they didn't have the level of resourcing available to them to do that we do today. You can spend 20 minutes doing some searching online or on Amazon and find just a massive amount of free to very cheap teaching and resourcing available to you. I mean, go to Amazon, go to the Kindle store and do 3 or 4 different search tags along the lines of, how to write or how to outline your novel or all of those various kinds of things. And it may not all be, master level stuff, but invest time and money and energy into the thinking and the process of how to write and how to write better, and then what to do with your writing when you get it done. There's so much available to you today that it's, in my opinion, it's kind of criminal to not do that. You don't have to wait until you can go to a large, expensive grad program. In fact, ironically, having been through one, I would strongly advise you, before you do something like that, to put your time and effort where you'd be putting your student loans and get some books on it and invest yourself in it and make writing time as part of your life initially, just to really make sure that it's something you want to invest effort into, because the quality of resourcing and teaching about pretty much every level of the writing process is phenomenal. Especially in one specific area that I want to really highlight is because of the increasing trend these days for successful authors and editors to maintain really detailed blogs where they write at length in great depth about their process and writing as a whole. If you do some basic web searching, like who are your favorite authors, they probably have a blog, and they probably have a blog that's backposted with dozens of articles about their own experience of the writing journey and writing itself. I can't emphasize strongly enough, avail yourself of the resources that are out there and devote some time to learning from those who have already kind of gone before and done the work and then have put in the effort to make that work available to you for free or very cheap all across the internet and in libraries. So that's my plug.
Like our videos, Justin.
Just like our
videos.
Precisely.
Just like our videos, but a lot better.
I wasn't going to say it, but I'm glad you did.
Well, but a lot better, but that's fine. And but just remember, research time, reading about writing time is not writing time. So if you're going to schedule, to do some of that stuff, do it when it's not writing time.
Very true. One last little plug related to that. Most of us these days have smartphones, and you can get a Kindle or a Kindle app or something similar to that on a very portable device. So one little thing that I've done that has really helped me get more good reading time in and not get in the way of my writing time is get my Kindle app on my phone and make sure that I've always got something on there that I grabbed off the Kindle store, a book, like a fiction book for that kind of reading. And that's where I've done the majority of my reading about writing or publishing or whatever, because I've got those on my phone. And so I'm able to redeem a lot of those kind of 20 minutes of dead time during the day in between stuff. I'll just pull my phone out and read, half a chapter or a chapter of something. And it's amazing how fast, 4 or 5, 15 or 20 minute segments throughout the day over the course of a week will add up to reading a lot more useful content. And in the space that you would have just spent, staring out the window or waiting in line for coffee or what have you. So just a thought.
Right. And that's good because those little pieces of time aren't time that you're going to be able to get to your setup and really get cranking on your content that you're trying to create. So that is really good time. Find those little pieces. Always have something to read in between when you're waiting at the dentist, whatever. I mean, you can read Ladies Home Journal, or you can read something on your phone about your craft. So I like it, Justin. But not to malign Ladies Home Journal or Sports Illustrated or anything.
You're gonna get angry hate me.
I love a good. I know. I love a good Sports Illustrated article on steroids or whatever. So.
Well, you're really gonna get angry hate mail. That should be our goal by the time we're done with the video series.
Yeah, piss everybody off. The NFL is full of steroids and head injury.
Send your hate mail to Adam Fleming at the address at the bottom of your screen. All right, everyone. Well, hopefully that video was useful, covering a variety of topics related to resourcing and researching and learning your craft. Looking forward to talking about that with you on our call. Have a great month.